Three black boys helped a billionaire fix his flat tire in the cold New York snow, and none of them knew that a Rolls-Royce would stop in front of their small house the very next morning. On that lonely road, the wind was crying, the snow was heavy, and the man who owned everything stood shaking beside his quiet car, feeling helpless for the first time in his life. His phone had no signal, the road was empty, and fear slowly filled his chest like the cold air around him. Then through the white storm, three boys appeared, their thin jackets soaked, their breath showing in the cold. Yet they still stopped to help a stranger everyone else would have ignored. What happened between them, on that frozen road, the story they told, and the reason they refused his money, would shake the billionaire in a way he never expected, and it would lead to the moment when that Rolls-Royce came to their house with a truth that would change their lives forever. The snow fell slowly at first, soft, harmless, almost peaceful. But as the minutes passed, the sky grew darker and the wind grew colder, and the small flakes turned into heavy white sheets that covered the long New York road like a blanket. Billionaire Ben Coleman sat behind the wheel of his Rolls-Royce, staring through the fogged windscreen as the storm swallowed everything. His fingers tapped the steering wheel, his breath came out in small clouds, and his mind raced with worry. He had left early that morning, hoping to beat the weather, hoping to reach the city in time for a meeting that could change his entire business. But life, as always, had its own plan. As he drove deeper into the countryside, the wind became stronger, the road became slippery, and the cold pressed against the car like invisible hands. Ben kept telling himself he would be fine, that the car would push through, that he was too powerful and too important to be held back by something as simple as snow. Then it happened. A sharp sound cut through the storm, loud, painful, like metal breaking. The car jerked to the side, slid, and came to a stop near a group of tall frozen trees. The steering wheel shook in Ben's hands. His heart dropped. He stepped out of the car, the cold air burning his face. He walked around to the side and froze. A flat tire. In normal weather, he would simply call someone. In normal weather, a driver or assistant would come in minutes. But this was not normal weather. Ben pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He looked at the screen. No bars. No signal. No help. A sick feeling rolled through his stomach. The snow was falling harder now, covering the road, covering the tire, covering his shoes. His breath turned heavy. He walked a few steps forward, holding his phone up in the air, hoping, praying for even one bar. But the screen stayed empty, no service. "Come on," he whispered, his voice shaking. "Please, not today." He tried again. Nothing. He tried calling anyway. The phone clicked, then showed the same message every time. Call failed. He lowered the phone slowly, feeling the cold creep through his gloves. He looked around. There were no houses, no cars, no people, just endless white fields and dark trees that stood like silent watchers. He was alone. Ben opened the boot and saw the spare tire, the tools, everything needed to fix it. But he stood there, staring at them because he had not touched a tire in more than 20 years. Back when he was young and broke, he would fix things by himself. But that version of him was long gone. The rich version of him paid people to do everything, from washing his clothes to parking his car. He picked up the metal wrench and felt a sharp sting shoot through his fingers. The cold metal had no mercy. His hands trembled. He knelt in the snow, his expensive coat dragging across the ground, the cold sinking through the fabric like tiny knives. He tried to twist one of the lug nuts. It did not move. He tried again, using all his strength. Nothing. The wrench slipped from his hand, hit the tire, and he fell backward into the snow. He stayed there for a moment, breathing hard, watching the sky. Snow landed on his face and melted slowly. He felt like everything was falling apart with it. He pushed himself up, wiped his face, and tried again. The wrench slipped once more. His shoulder hit the side of the car. Pain shot through him, sharp and quick. He whispered a small, tired cry. "I cannot do this," he said softly. "I cannot do this." He stood, shaking his hands to warm them, pacing beside the car, feeling frustration rise in him like fire. He looked at the time. The meeting was getting closer. His chance of making it was dying like the daylight. He closed his eyes, took a slow breath, and for the first time in years he felt something he had forgotten. Fear, deep, quiet, honest fear. He opened his eyes again and looked around, praying for someone, anyone, to appear. But the storm only grew stronger. The wind carried the sound of the branches, and the sky looked heavy like it wanted to fall on him. Ben pressed his hands on his face, fighting the cold and the panic sitting in his chest. Then he heard something. At first it was faint, soft, almost lost in the wind. A laugh. Then another. Ben lifted his head. He squinted through the falling snow. Shapes moved in the distance. Small shapes. Moving closer. He stepped toward the road, trying to see clearly. 3 boys came through the storm, riding bicycles, their small wheels pushing through the deep snow. They were young, maybe 14 or 15, and their jackets looked thin for this weather. One wore a brown jacket with a tear on the sleeve. Another wore glasses taped on the side. The smallest had a black beanie that barely covered his ears. They stopped in front of the Rolls-Royce. The tallest boy, Felix, smiled a little as he stared at the car. "That is a nice car, sir," he said. Ben blinked, unsure if they were real. "Where did you come from?" "Mapleford," the boy with glasses, Jasper, answered. "It is a small town, about 3 miles back." The smallest boy, Alex, pointed to the tire. "Your tire is gone, sir." "Yes," Ben whispered. "I know." Felix stepped forward. "We can fix it." Ben almost laughed. "You boys can fix a tire?" Felix shrugged. "We always fix tires. Our dads taught us." "Well, Felix's dad taught us before he passed." Ben stared at them, the cold still biting his neck. "You do not have gloves," he said quietly. "We never have gloves," Jasper said with a small smile. Before Ben could stop them, the boys went to the boot and pulled out the tools. They did not wait for instructions. They did not ask questions. They worked fast, steady, and sure, like they had done it 100 times. Ben watched in silence. Something warm touched his chest, something he had not felt in so long. Kindness, real kindness. Felix tightened the last lug nut, his hands red from the cold. Jasper lowered the jack. Alex brushed snow off his jacket. "All done, sir," Felix said gently. Ben stood there speechless, the snow falling around them. He reached for his wallet. That was the moment everything would begin to change. Snow continued to fall around them, soft at first, then heavier again, like the sky wanted to remind them that they were still in the middle of a dangerous morning. Ben Coleman stood there holding his wallet, the cold biting his fingers, his breath coming out in small clouds. The 3 boys stood in front of him, tired, shivering, but smiling gently, as if fixing a billionaire's tire in a storm was a normal thing for them. Ben pulled out a stack of money, $500 in crisp notes. He held the cash out to Felix, his hand shaking from both cold and emotion. "You earned this," Ben said quietly. "Take it, please." Felix looked at the money, then looked at his friends, Jasper and Alex. The wind brushed snow across their faces, but none of them stepped forward. None of them reached for the cash. Jasper pushed his glasses up with his cold fingers. Alex shifted his feet, looking uncomfortable. Felix finally spoke. "We cannot take it, sir." Ben blinked. The cold air stung his eyes. "Why not?" he asked, confused. "This is $500. You boys helped me. You saved me. Take it." Felix shook his head. "We did not do it for money, sir." Ben felt something strange inside him, a mix of confusion and disbelief. "Everyone works for money," he said softly. "Everyone wants money." "Not for this," Jasper said. "Not for helping someone stuck in the snow." Alex stepped closer, his voice small but steady. "We help because it is right, sir." Ben stared at them, unable to speak for a moment. The cold wind passed through the trees and carried the silence with it. He lowered his hand slowly, the money still between his fingers. Felix took a deep breath. "My dad taught us," he said. "Peter Davies. He taught us everything." Ben swallowed. The name felt heavy in the air. "What did he teach you?" he asked. Felix looked down at his hands, which were still covered with small black marks from the tire. "He used to fix cars for people all the time. Old cars, broken cars, cars stuck in the middle of the road at night. He fixed them, and most times people tried to pay him. He always said no." Ben frowned softly. "Why would he say no?" he asked. "Why refuse money if you need it?" Felix sighed. The snow fell gently on his eyelashes. He said money is good, but kindness is better. He said money finishes, but kindness travels. He said when you help someone for money, it is just business. But when you help someone for nothing, it becomes a connection, something that touches the heart. Ben felt something hit him inside, something he had not felt in so many years. A tightness, a warmth, a pain he could not explain. Felix continued quietly. "Before he died, he called me to his bed. He said he would leave us without much, no big house, no money, no special things. But he said he would leave us something better. A good name. A name people respect. A name people remember with love." Jasper nodded. "People still talk about him in Mapleford. Everyone knew him." Alex looked away for a moment, blinking fast. "We promised him we would help people like he helped them. That is why we cannot take your money." The wind grew louder for a moment, as if the world paused to feel the weight of those words. Ben stood still. He felt small for the first time in many years. Small, but touched deeply. He lowered the money, slowly putting it back into his wallet. His voice, when it came out, was quiet and shaky. "I do not know what to say," he whispered. "You do not have to say anything," Felix said with a small smile. "You were stuck. We could help. That is enough." Ben stared at the ground for a moment. The snow settled on his coat, soft but cold. He looked at the three boys again. Their jackets were thin. Their gloves were missing. Their shoes were wet. But they stood tall, proud, and warm inside in a way Ben could not understand. "You boys should not be out in this storm," he said, trying to regain some control. "It is dangerous. You should be home." "We were going to shovel Mrs. Parker's walkway," Jasper said. "She is old. She cannot do it herself." "In this weather?" Ben asked softly, almost whispering. Felix nodded. "It will get worse later. Better to do it now." Ben pressed a hand on the side of his car. His heart felt heavy, like something inside him was shifting slowly. "Your father," he said. "He sounds like he was a good man." "The best," Felix whispered. For a long moment, no one spoke. The snow fell quietly between them, as if it wanted to wrap the moment in white silence. Then Alex pointed at the car. "You should go, sir. The storm is starting again." Ben nodded, but he did not move. He kept looking at them, at their thin clothes, their red fingers, their tired faces. The boys began picking up their bikes, preparing to continue through the deep snow. Felix wiped his hands on his jacket and looked at Ben. "Do you need anything else?" he asked gently. Ben shook his head. "No. But I wish I could give you something." "You already did," Jasper said. "You listened." That small sentence hit Ben harder than the storm. He opened the car door slowly, but before getting in, he looked at them one last time. "Thank you," he said softly, "for everything." The boys smiled and nodded once. Then they got on their bicycles and rode into the snow, their small figures slowly fading into the white storm, as if the world swallowed them gently. Ben sat in the driver's seat, closed the door, and felt a kind of silence he had not felt in years. The car heater hummed softly, warming his face. But the warmth inside him, the feeling in his chest, came from something much deeper. He watched the direction the boys had gone. Something pulled at his heart, something heavy, something he could not explain. He put the car into drive. But he could not stop thinking about Felix, Jasper, and Alex. And the father they lost. And the lesson they carried. Something inside him whispered that this moment, this small meeting in the snow, was not the end. It was only the beginning. The drive back toward the city felt longer than anything Ben Coleman had experienced in his life. The heater in the Rolls-Royce pushed warm air across his hands, yet his chest still felt cold, as if the storm had followed him inside the car. His eyes stayed fixed on the snowy road, but his mind refused to leave the three boys who had vanished into the white distance. Every sentence they spoke repeated itself in his head. "We cannot take money, sir. We promised my dad. Kindness travels. You listened." He had never met children like them. Not in his business meetings, not in the places he visited, not in the world he lived in, a world filled with expensive walls and people who smiled with their lips but not their hearts. Those boys were different. Simple, honest, strong, in a quiet way that felt rare. He reached the city hours later, tired and heavy inside. Instead of feeling relief, he felt emptiness settling in him like dust. The roads in the city were wet, not snowy. The buildings loud, the cars fast, but nothing felt the same. It was as if the storm had opened a door inside him he could not close. His company driver stood waiting outside the headquarters. "Sir, are you all right?" he asked. Ben nodded slowly, forcing a small smile. "I am fine." But he was not fine. Something inside him was changing, and he could feel it with every slow breath. He went into the tall glass building, walked past the front desk, rode the elevator, and stepped into the conference room where his top managers were waiting. They stood when he entered. "Sir, the meeting starts in 5 minutes," one of them said. Ben sat down. He looked at the long table, the bright lights, the folders, the laptops, the expensive suits around him. Everything felt familiar, yet strange. Like he was sitting inside a life he had lived for too long, a life he no longer belonged to. As the meeting began, voices filled the room. People talked about numbers, plans, profits, deals, stock market trends, growth, risks, gains, more growth, more numbers, more plans. But Ben heard none of it. His mind kept drifting back to the white road, the boys' thin jackets, their red cold hands, and the way Felix spoke about his father with so much pride, a pride money could not buy. A manager asked Ben a question, but he did not hear it until the room fell silent. Someone touched his shoulder gently. "Sir, are you all right?" his assistant whispered. Ben blinked. "Yes," he said softly. "I am listening." But he was not. His heart had left this building hours ago. After the meeting, he stepped into his office, closed the door, and leaned against the wall. His office smelled of fresh wood and expensive polish, but somehow it felt empty. He stared at the framed awards, the family pictures, the penthouse keys on his desk. Everything felt like decorations from a life he was no longer sure of. He walked to the window and looked down at the busy city. Cars moved fast under the streetlights. People hurried along the sidewalks. The world looked cold, not from snow but from silence. Ben touched the glass gently, remembering the boys' laughter, their simple smiles, their strong hands fixing a tire without asking for anything. He whispered softly to himself. "Who am I sharing my life with?" he asked. "Who am I helping?" No answer came. He sat on his leather chair, pressed his palms together, and let the room stay quiet. The silence pushed him to face the truth he kept avoiding. Without realizing it, he picked up his phone. His thumb hovered over the screen. He had no reason to call the boys. He did not even have their number. He barely knew their town. All he knew was the name Mapleford and the road they came from. He closed his eyes. He saw Felix's face again, Jasper's careful smile, Alex's shy eyes. Something pulled inside his chest. Something strong, steady, and real. He stood up. Then he made a decision. A quiet one. A heavy one. A decision that would change everything. He grabbed his coat, locked his office, and walked straight out of the building without telling anyone where he was going. His assistant ran after him. "Sir, are we canceling the evening meeting?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "What should I tell them?" she asked. Ben paused at the door. Snow had started falling again outside. He looked at her calmly. "Tell them I have something important to do," he said. The driver opened the door for him. Ben hesitated for a moment, then shook his head. "I will drive myself," he said. The driver looked surprised, but stepped back. Ben got into one of the company cars, started the engine, and pulled away from the building. The city lights faded behind him as he drove northern again, toward the countryside, toward the long, quiet roads where the storm had held him that morning. The snow grew thicker with every mile. Soon he was far from the noise, far from the suits, far from the meetings. The world became white again, silent again, honest again. He followed the signs until he found the small wooden one that read Mapleford, half covered in snow. He swallowed hard, unsure what he was doing, unsure what he would say if he found them, unsure what they would think of him. But he kept driving. The town appeared slowly, a small place with simple houses, narrow streets, and old street lamps that flickered gently in the snow. Children played outside despite the cold. Parents carried groceries. People walked, wrapped in scarves and thick jackets. Ben turned into a small diner near the corner of the street. Warm light glowed from the windows. He parked, stepped out, and felt the cold hit him again. He walked to the door, pushed it open, and the soft bell rang above him. Inside, the diner was warm and crowded with friendly faces. The smell of soup and fresh bread filled the air. Ben stood there quietly, unsure where to start. Then he froze. Because sitting at a corner table, sharing a plate of fries, laughing softly with steam rising from their clothes, were Felix, Jasper, and Alex. His heart moved in his chest, slow and heavy. He had found them. But what he was about to discover next, inside that small diner, would shake him more than the snowstorm ever did. The diner felt warm and alive, filled with voices, laughter, and the soft clatter of plates. But for Ben Coleman, everything else faded the moment he saw Felix, Jasper, and Alex sitting quietly in the corner. Snow melted slowly from their jackets, forming small puddles on the floor, but they did not care. They looked relaxed, happy, peaceful in a way that touched something deep inside him. Ben stood at the entrance for a moment, unsure of how to approach them. He had faced boardrooms filled with powerful people. He had signed billion-dollar deals. He had stood on stages and spoken to crowds. Yet right now he felt nervous, as if he were the one seeking help. He walked slowly toward their table. The boys looked up, their eyes widening in surprise. Felix froze with a fry halfway to his mouth. Jasper adjusted his glasses quickly. Alex gasped softly, nearly dropping his drink. "Sir," Felix said quietly, "you came back." Ben pulled out a chair and sat down beside them. His voice came out soft. "I wanted to see you boys again." Jasper leaned forward. Did something happen? He asked. Ben shook his head gently. No. I just wanted to understand more. The boys exchanged looks. None of them expected a billionaire to walk into a small diner in a quiet town just to talk to them. Felix sat up straighter. What do you want to understand, sir? He asked. Ben took a slow breath. You refused my money, he said. You told me about your father, about his kindness, about helping people without asking for anything. You boys reminded me of something I forgot a long time ago. Alex spoke softly. What did you forget, sir? Ben's eyes lowered to the table. How to care, he said. How to be human. How to give, without needing something back. The boys went quiet. Ben continued. I have spent years building a life filled with things. Cars, houses, businesses, travel. But none of it feels warm. None of it feels real. Then today, 3 boys on bicycles stopped in the snow for me. For nothing. Just kindness. He paused, his voice thickening. I cannot stop thinking about it. Felix swallowed gently. Dad used to say people carry light inside, he said. Some hide it, some forget it, some lose it, but it never dies. Ben looked at him with wet eyes. Your father was wise. A soft smile grew on Felix's face. We miss him every day, he whispered. Ben cleared his throat, then leaned forward. I want to ask you something, he said. But I need you to be honest. The boys nodded. What do you do when you are not in school? Ben asked. Where do you go? Jasper answered. We go to the youth center, he said. We help clean. We help take care of the little kids. We fix things when they break. Alex lowered his head. It is not in good shape, though. The roof leaks. The heaters do not work well. The computers are old. But we stay, because the small kids need somewhere warm to go. Felix added, Mrs. Emma Collins runs it. She tries her best, but she is tired. Ben listened carefully. Every word touched him deeper. He imagined the old building, the broken heaters, the small children sitting with jackets inside, trying to stay warm. His chest tightened. He thought of the money he had, the power, the resources. He thought of how easily he could fix something like that. He looked at the boys again. Can you take me there? He asked. They stared at him, shocked. You want to see the center? Jasper asked. Yes, Ben said. Now. Felix stood quickly. Let us go. They left the diner together and walked through the snowy streets of Mapleford. Ben followed the boys as they led him past small houses, quiet blocks, and frozen sidewalks. After a few minutes, they stopped in front of a large brick building with faded paint and cracked windows. This is it, Felix said softly. Ben felt something twist inside him as he stepped closer. The door creaked loudly when Jasper pushed it open. Warm air, weak but present, brushed against their faces. Inside, the building looked old and tired. The walls had marks, the floor had worn patches. A few children sat around a small heater, holding books and crayons. A woman with short brown hair and gentle eyes walked toward them. Felix, she said, you boys came back fast. Then she noticed Ben, and her face changed. Oh my, she whispered. Sir, can I help you? Felix spoke softly. Mrs. Emma, this is Mr. Ben Coleman. She gasped lightly. The Ben Coleman? She asked. Ben nodded with a small smile. I wanted to see this place. Mrs. Emma looked embarrassed. We are doing our best, she said quietly. It is not perfect, but we keep the children safe. Ben walked through the room slowly, touching the walls, looking at the broken heaters, the old books, the rusty playground outside the window. He felt a deep, heavy ache inside him. These children deserved better. The boys deserved better. This town deserved better. He turned to the boys and to Mrs. Emma. His voice shook softly. I want to fix this, he said. All of it. Mrs. Emma blinked. Fix? she asked. How much do you mean, sir? Ben looked around the building. Everything, he said. The roof, the heat, the computers, the playground, the floors, the walls. Everything. I want to rebuild this center. Felix gasped softly. Jasper's mouth fell open. Alex clasped his hands together. Mrs. Emma covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. Sir, you do not understand, she said. This building needs hundreds of thousands of dollars. Ben nodded. I understand, and I will give it. The room fell silent. Ben turned to the boys. You helped me without asking for anything, he said. Tomorrow morning, a Rolls-Royce will stop at your house. I am coming to meet your mother or guardian. I am coming to help your family. I am coming to make sure you boys never suffer in silence. Felix's lips trembled. Why us? He whispered. Ben knelt down slowly so he could look at them at eye level. His voice came out warm, honest, and full. Because you reminded me of who I used to be, he said, and who I want to become again. Felix wiped his face. Jasper held his glasses with shaking hands. Alex covered his mouth with both palms. Mrs. Emma cried softly. Ben stood, looked at all of them, and said the words that changed the air in the room. Tomorrow, everything begins. Dear viewers, this story reminds us that kindness is never small, kindness is never wasted, and kindness never dies. 3 boys with almost nothing in their pockets gave something money could not buy. They gave their heart. And that simple act touched a billionaire who had forgotten what it means to care for someone. Sometimes the people who look the weakest carry the strongest light. Sometimes the people who look the poorest are the richest in love. And sometimes, the moment you help a stranger becomes the moment your whole life changes. If this story touched you, if it opened your heart even a little, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories like this. Your support helps us reach more people, and together, we can spread love, hope, and compassion across the world. Please comment where you are watching from, and tell us what you learned from this story. If you want more stories from us, type more stories in the comments section, and you will be the first to get the next emotional video. Before you go, answer these questions in the comments to keep the conversation alive. 1. Would you have helped Ben if you were in the boy's position? 2. What do you think is the true meaning of kindness? 3. Do you believe one small act can change someone's life forever?